Thank you all for being here. I'm the last speaker, and you know what that means, that I have half my allotted time. But all the other speakers have said what I came to say, and have said it much better with slides. So I have no slides, very little data. My concluding remarks are to try to tie the beginnings of Earthwatch to what you have seen today, and hopefully what we will find in the future. Founders, as you know, should be seen and not heard. At least I'm told that often at the board meeting. But at my age, everything you say reminds you of something else. So before I speak, permit me to say a few words. People have come and gone all day long. I'd like to reintroduce the room to the room. Those who are staff who have created this extraordinary institution, not present staff only, but past staff as well. Will you please raise your hands or rise? There you are. Can you see them? The perpetrators of this event, at least two are in the room. Larry Mason, who is CEO, President, and the Director of everything Earthwatch, and his colleague, Marcia O'Doherty, and the trustee who said, do it. Gary Goldring has left the meeting, but those three deserve a special appreciation. Larry, you must identify yourself. I'm doing the identification for the following reasons. Two things I've noticed, three actually. I have 7 minutes. Number two, the mind is happiest when it's learning. And I was thrilled today, I don't know about you, by the presentations given to us by those who have come. And the third is meetings like this that last all day, you work up a fierce thirst. And you have stories that I have not heard, and I would love to know more of them. So I've decided to go park at the bar at the Russell House at 5 o'clock on Harvard Square, hoping some of the conferees will come by and we can finish the meeting there, if that's all right. Marcia is at the back of the room to help people make flights. And what I would like to do now is to tell you how this whole thing started. There was no burning bush, there was no lightning strike. Indeed, I stood on the shoulders of very fine people. I answered the telephone. I was trying to be an investment banker in New York, and Bob Citron from the Smithsonian, the administrator, asked me to lunch, and over dessert he asked me for $50,000, thinking I had it. I didn't then, I don't now. And But I was enraptured, enthralled by what he spoke about, looking for intermercurial objects between the sun and Mercury. And so I went back to the office, saying what you would say if you didn't have the money, I'll look into it, and called on a whim the National Geographic, the only time I think I've called them since. And I said with my deepest voice everything I'd heard at lunch, and asked to speak to the film division. A voice came on, and I repeated myself. I said we were going to go to Mauritania with Harvard and the Smithsonian. We were going to look for intermercurial objects. We were going to do coronal spectroscopy. I learned to say that at lunch. And would they be interested? And the voice came back and said, we would be. And I said with all confidence that I didn't really have, well, there's a facility fee of $50,000. I have no idea where I got the word, and if I had been any one of you, you would have said 75. The voice said, no problem. I said, can I get your name? And that really was the start of this enchantment. What did I find? What I found in Boston were an extraordinary small band of people, Bob, Jane Fisher, Betsy Caney, David Trook, Wes Harrington, Bob's children on the floor licking envelopes, creating something called Educational Expeditions. And I'm proud to say that Jane Fisher is in the room today, and I would like her to stand up and take your applause. My very modest contribution, and I mean modest, was that I saw scientists as entrepreneurs who needed leverage, who needed capital, who needed connections. And for some odd reason, I was so bored with capitalism, I thought, well, why not take them public? Why not get the taxpayers to invest directly in research rather than passing their taxes through the National Science Foundation? We became a poor man's NSF, and I mean really poor. I would be asked, and what is it again you do? And I would say, oh, we invest in rocks and stars, plants and animals, people and their ruins. And the media would say, oh, that's okay, that's pretty good, huh? We started very modestly. Scientists came at us with very interesting proposals. John Guppy from, not John Guppy, he studied guppies. John Endler from Princeton. It's been a long time. He called, he wanted to know, could you find volunteers who are psychologically stable enough to sit by streams for 8 hours at a time in Venezuela and watch guppies mate? I said, not many, but we might find a few. And it went on and on like that. We had extraordinary proposals. We went to the bottom of the sea for shipwrecks. We did many, many projects with eclipses. I climbed into live volcanoes. I, like Humphrey Bogart, have dragged boats through chest-deep water infested with things that I did not know were there. But the PIs always say, don't worry, mate, it's all right. Just do it. Just take the boat over there. And what I learned is that principal investigators, scientists, are the most remarkable group of people. They have the quality that you look for when you're searching for fighter pilots. No apparent fear of failure. So will the principal investigators in the room and those presenters who helped us today understand life on Earth, please stand one more time. Thank you. Dan? And while I'm at it, we have representatives of Earthwatch from Brazil, from Japan, from Great Britain, and should be from India. I think the Russians got out. They had too many revolutions. The Spanish, we couldn't spell their middle names. It's changed over the years. But will the worldwide Earthwatch contingent who are here in the room please stand so everybody can find you for a drink afterwards? People? Shigeo? Thank you. Thank you very much for all of that. And obviously I have not honored the volunteers or the sponsors. The question was asked earlier, who's been on an expedition? I'd like to ask the last question, which is, after today, who would like to go on one of these expeditions? Thank you very much. Good. So our early efforts. Essentially, Earthwatch has, from the very beginning, been private, a choice we made, didn't want the government to get too involved. We did go down with our credentials several times to the National Science Foundation, but they just shoot us away. The first 20 years really were supported entirely by individuals. That model worked better in the United States than it did around the world, and so that our most imaginative affiliates and partners around the world have created versions of Earthwatch which you have seen, some quite powerful. Alliances with industry, HSBC, Alcoa, others, who have said, our employees are citizens, why can't they participate? And so chasing down water is a good idea in a world that may be short of it shortly. The work we're doing now in cities, urban forestry in LA and Boston, to try to understand the relationship between urban centers, where more than half the world will live, and nature that lives there is very important. The expansive model of Earthwatch really was the invention of all of you, all of those who have come along over the years. The adaptation of a very simple idea that people who are so-called non-specialists are in their own right specialists. They have a passion, they have a talent. Dentists can look into 2-million-year-old teeth. Movie producers can take an idea. We had one who spent a couple of weeks in a tent studying the Pokot people in Ethiopia, and he went back and he wrote a play that was an award-winning Kojak crime program, and he had Kojak, who was kind of a rough bully. Any of those who remember his program, he had an Indian pacifist detective come and work with him. And they drove around in the car and, well, what would we do about this, you know? And it was a terrific cross-cultural connection between two cultures faced with the same problem, urban crime. Came right off Earthwatch, if you will. What is it about? The democratization of science, allowing people to own the problem, means the problems hopefully will be solved. And so what Earthwatch does through its very many portals is to engage good minds, raise the questions. Science, as Dan Rubenstein has taught us, is the art of asking the right question. And so what we try to do, and have always done, is to make the principal investigators the star of the show and to ask the questions that they want to have answered and have all of that goodwill come forward. And so it has. Marsha, 2 minutes over, sorry. What we've learned is a lot, as you would guess. The first thing we learned is it's really not about Earthwatch, it's about you. It's about your aspirations, not just your hypotheses and your research and your questions, as we've seen, but the deeper concerns about who we are, where we come from, and where we might be going. The uncertainties that we now see more clearly in this generation are rushing at us. Change, as we all know, those of you who are biologists embrace change, but the velocity of change can be, and most likely will be, destabilizing, perhaps even beginning in our generation. We learned that Earthwatch is inherently interdisciplinary, that if you bring people from all walks of life to a site, that they are arrestingly interesting to specialists. They see things through lenses that the specialist has not focused through in a long time. And so the research products have been, in our view, society serving, science serving others. And that really comes, I think, from so many non-specialists, now over 100,000 people working on expeditions, probably close to 125, given all the corporate involvement, in 120 countries. So that's been very helpful over the years. The values of the scientist, in my view, have influenced us all. I think, as you heard today, there's a strong investment in data. Scientists would much prefer to lose their camera than lose the data in the camera. And their commitment to data, to the facts, comes with the commitment to attribution. On whose shoulders do they stand? Whose papers have they read? Whose facts are they quoting? And they are in turn reviewed or peer-reviewed by colleagues in their discipline. Colleagues seen and colleagues unseen. That leaves the science community, in some sense, in a wonderful position to see the facts behind change, but in an awkward position in terms of communicating those facts, because they are trained, in some sense, to reach for prizes, for security, for tenure, and for grants. And to be bold, to get outside of that framework, can be powerfully attacked by others who are watching you in your field. So I think we're coming to a point where, in order to change this equation, two things are going to need to happen. One is happening right here in this room, and that is that citizens are taking an interest, a great interest, in the velocity of change. We have now ubiquitous handheld equipment that can record data, transmit it, connect it to the rest of the world. The other thing I think that will happen is that the tellers of truth, the seekers of knowledge, will have higher public standing as public scientists. They will be not only encouraged but lionized for helping us see farther and farther into the future. You thought I was going to talk about leeches and volcanoes, I bet. What I'd like to leave you with is the thought that this institution is in its infancy, as is the whole notion of citizen science. It is galloping ahead. There are hundreds of apps. iNaturalist, represented up on the floor, is one of the better apps where you can get involved. But there is still time for you to steer and to help translate what's going on in the world and pass it on to colleagues who are in a position to take what we call actionable knowledge and put it to work to change laws and nonsense. Science, religion, and strong beliefs held by families are in collision, as we know, all the time. Earthwatch, I hope, will be able to participate ultimately in that. We don't have too many Sunni Shia teams working together, but the possibility that people on different sides of cultural divides can attack the same problem at the same time and search for a common solution excites us all, and I hope those of you in the field who are able to do something about it will do just that. The signs of change for me, as you would guess, over nearly 50 years, are the following. When I was first moved by this, involved and engaged, the environment literally was the picture on the company catalog. It was a beautiful picture. It was pristine, and we went after that with the great conservation organizations, the World Wildlife Fund, the IUCN, Wilderness Society, et cetera, first saving mega charismatic fauna, large, beautiful animals. Then they covered larger areas, so all the small bits and pieces that made up that ecosystem were also protected and saved. And then we moved more into the work of ecosystems management and the adaptive work of scientists today. And along comes the force and the winds of not only societal change, land use change, pests and invasives, but climate change and the loss of the life support systems for so many of our neighbors. So that the language just in these last, 10 years, we've gone from the concern about mitigation to adaptation, resiliency to sustainability. We talk about systems in engineering terms like forcings and loadings and footprints and geoengineering. We look for safe operating zones, the carrying capacity of this and that, tolerable limits, limits to consumption, limits to growth, planetary boundaries, thresholds of uncertainty, the ethical time horizons facing this generation, and ethical lifeways. So as you can see, society in some sense is coping with the forces that you in this room are discovering and reporting on. And I think the movement is all, in my view, in a very powerful direction. But it does remind me, has anybody been in the Navy other than me? 2 or 3 people in the Navy. I spent about 170,000 miles at sea on my way to these responsibilities. And as you know, if you sail or have been at sea, if you have approaching lights on the same bearing and a declining range, you know that you have in front of you the promise of a collision. And there were these lights in this story I read about, and the seaman on the watch sent out a signal. It said, approaching light, please alter your course 10 degrees north. And through the night came the return light, alter your course 10 degrees south. called the captain. The captain came up. They looked at all the data. The captain got on the signal and said, approaching light, this is the captain speaking. Alter your course 10 degrees north. And through the night came, this is Seaman Jones, alter your course 10 degrees south. Well, finally, as the range narrowed and the excitement rose, the last blast of light went out, and it said, this is an emergency, alter your course immediately. I am a battleship. And through the night came the light, alter your course 10 degrees south. I am a lighthouse. You, my friends, are lighthouses. I wish you will continue to blink loudly, and maybe even at the Russell House Tavern at 5 o'clock. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.